Thank you very much indeed, Liz. And now on to our keynote speaker. So Stuart Rose has worked in retail for over 30 years, starting off at Marks & Spencer's in 1972. He joined the Burton Group in 1989 and has since been Chief Executive of Argos, Booker and Arcadia Group. Subsequently, he returned to Marks & Spencer and was named Chief Executive in 2004 and Chairman in 2008. And during his time at M&S, he was Chairman of Business in the Community from 2008 to 10. Since leaving M&S earlier this year, Sir Stuart has focused on his non-executive roles at Land Securities and Woolworths South Africa. He's also on the advisory committee of Bridgepoint. Welcome, Sir Stuart.
Well, listen, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Oopsie daisy, I'm about to destroy the joint before I start. Thank you for inviting me here today. Thank you particularly to Alan Parker. Of course, we can blame Alan Parker if at the end of the day you ask the question, why on earth did he come? But that comes a bit later on. Thank you for inviting me to come and be part of this BCE Environmental Awards, Leadership Awards afternoon. It's easy for me to come and say yes to an occasion like this because sustainability is something that I feel very strongly about. It's something that I was very heavily involved in even before I went to Marks & Spencer, back to Marks & Spencer in 2004, something that I was heavily involved in when I was there and something that I continue to talk about since I've left the business. And this afternoon, we all know, of course, that these leadership awards recognise businesses of all sizes, from startups right the way through to multinationals, who are winning the battle of meeting today's commercial demands without, to put it probably in the best way, compromising resources of future generations. And I think that was the ambition when these awards were set up some 25 years ago. And it is, of course, a challenge that we all face. But, of course, I always say, glass half empty, glass half full, turn it to glass half full. It's a challenge that gives us opportunity. So this afternoon I want to talk to you briefly about why embedding sustainability into the heart of your businesses is the right thing to do, not only commercially, that ought to be a very important driver, but also, of course, ethically. So let's start with a few facts. Facts you probably know about, but they're worth repeating. Boom or bust, good times or bad, warmer or cooler. One fact that will affect us here very soon is that by 2030, and people talk rather glibly about 2020 or 2030. 2020 is only 9 years away. 2030 is only 19 years away. We will be producing or needing to produce some 50% more food, and at the same time we're going to need 50% more energy, and we're going to need something like 30% more water. Now, these are not my numbers. They're numbers that were part of in Professor John Boddington's report, government's chief scientific advisor, when he made his report, and he called that the 50-50-30, the perfect storm. Now, the global recession has masked fundamental shifts in the way that business, government and society access the resources and their customers and their markets and their capital. But the short answer is that there isn't enough to go around, period. And therefore, we cannot go on as we are. And that was the genesis of what Marks & Spencer tried to do when it started its Plan A back in 2007. We said at the time, the Plan A and there is no Plan B. I'm rather pleased to see now, of course, in the economy we've got a Plan A and we've got no Plan B, according to George Osborne. And we'll hear more about that when he speaks at the Mansion House this evening. But, of course, there will be some unsustainable business models that do survive the next decade. They'll survive the next 20 years. They'll survive the next 30 years. But they will become fewer. And they will become fewer. And even those that recognise the need for change cannot underestimate the scale and the duration of change that's necessary as we go into the future. Now, during the global economic crisis, it would have been very easy for responsible business practice to slip down the agenda. But I actually believe, and we've seen this, that the business case has actually strengthened. Interestingly, I was at the Side Business School this morning talking about, amongst other things, corporate reputations. And it's interesting that something 5 years ago that really wasn't on the agenda, certainly in the top 3 or 4 things that chief executives would have to worry about, is now very much in the forefront of what chief executives have to worry about. So it has come up the agenda dramatically, and that's happened in the last 5 years, 3.5 of which we've had this big recession. Environmental and ethical issues do matter to consumers. There's always going to be the 10% of Luddites at the bottom who believe that climate change doesn't exist. But believe me, consumers do care about it, because in the company that I ran, Marks & Spencer, until the end of last year, we used to monitor it on a regular basis, and all they would say to you is, yes, we get it, but show us how to implement it without charging us any more money. So they continue to look at businesses and not, rather sadly, governments to actually make the change and to lead the way forward. You may know this too, but of the 100 largest economic entities in the world, 63 are corporations, and they're not countries. So people around the world increasingly therefore see businesses as institutions who are strong enough to meet the short and the long-term challenges that are now facing our planet. And coming to grips with these challenges is more than just a corporate responsibility. It's essential not only to our corporate survival, but it is essential and it is central to our collective survival. Now, until the 1980s, business leaders used the word sustainability, mostly probably, I think, to demonstrate or to describe the company's ability to increase its earnings on a steady basis. But in 1987, Norway's former Prime Minister, a gentleman called Gro Brundtland, defined sustainable development as, and I quote, meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Not far away from the aspiration of these awards when they were set up some 25 years ago. And I think that's pretty close to the mark. So that's what led us back in 2007 at Marks & Spencer to launch what we called then our Plan A, and that's a 100-point eco plan and an ethical plan. It's designed to embrace the challenges of climate, of waste, of recycling, of using more sustainable raw materials, of fair partnerships, and of course actually also helping to educate not only our consumers but in Marks & Spencer's case its staff on leading healthier lifestyles. And it was actually designed to transform M&S's operations between 2007 and 2012. Now we haven't quite got to 2012 yet, but I'll tell you about that in a second. What were the key ambitions? 5 pillars. 100 items. Becoming carbon neutral from their own operations by 2012, sending no waste to landfill, extending sustainable sourcing to higher levels, setting new standards in ethical trading, and helping customers and employees to live healthier lifestyles. Now, I said at the time when we launched this that this was a deliberately ambitious and in some cases a difficult plan. Indeed, it was so difficult that to some of the 100 points we didn't even know the answers. But we didn't let that put us off. We said, right, we're going to get started. We may have to change our mind on certain things, but let's get moving. And actually it was then getting that into the business and embedding it that gave them the determination, and it wasn't me, it was the employees in the business and the suppliers and the partners and the government organisations we work with to make this thing move forward. And we knew by the time that we had gone 6 months into this plan that doing anything less than setting a very high target and wanting to achieve most of it was not an option. So what's happened? 3 years on, 95% of the 100 targets that we set had been met. But the most important thing, and you've just heard this from Liz, if I can call you Liz, that M&S is seeing financial returns from Plan A. And I was asked about this morning when I was in Oxford. What was it like going to trying to describe to investors back in 2007 that you were going as a company to invest some £200 million over a 5-year period of the company's money in doing the right thing? And the answer was it wasn't very easy, particularly when you said to the investors that you were not going to pass a penny on to the consumers in that time. And what's the wonderful thing that happened by the time we got to year 3, fully audited, and in fact I've just had the company report from the company's results from last year, came out last week, and it says in their Plan A, and I quote, it said that they had additional profits of £70 million for the financial year rather than the planned cost of £40 million, all coming from a range of eco-efficiencies, less waste, less fuel, less energy, less packaging, and from new income streams. And that absolutely does prove, and it's just what we've heard about B&Q from Liz Goodwin, that Al Gore's dictum that sustainable businesses can be profitable businesses absolutely is true. Can be done. It's not just now greenwash, not just some sort of a nirvana that we're all searching for or an impossible fact. It is actually demonstrably true. You can do it, and it doesn't matter what size your business is. And that's why it's really important and very encouraging that other companies like Walmart, like O2, like Unilever, like Nike understand this commercial importance and have embarked on their own ethical journeys. And I'm going to quote a chief executive from a company you may or may not have heard of, and that's a guy called Jon Chouinard, who's the chief executive of Patagonia. They make some pretty good outdoor clothing, very ethical clothing. And what he actually said was, he put it in a very simple way, which I used to quote in M&S when I was there, which is simply, every time we do the right thing, we make more money. It's very important to remember that.